Welcome back, chillers.
If we're here, you know what that means.
It's Tuesday.
And this is another episode of True Crime and Chill. As I'm sure many of you know, I got married last weekend.
Yay! Still a little salty that I couldn't be there, but you looked great. She did. She looked amazing, though. I sound I'm not feeling very well this week, guys, so please bear with me while we do this episode. Yeah, but Amber got married. It was great. It was a very sunny day. No rain, which was good because it's been raining constantly
No,
here.
but it was smoky.
Smoky.
It was smoky. Because of the wildfires. So all the smoke happened to blow in.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I keep forgetting that you guys are on fire basically right now. So hey, you guys, it's still summer and it's freaking hot. Let's not start fires in Washington right now.
And we haven't had a lot of rain this year. In fact, I think it's rained 2 days since the end of June.
Which is completely different from here because we just had a flash flood, so.
So when I went digging for a case for this week's episode, I thought it only be appropriate to discuss the case of the 8-day bride, especially since at the time of this recording, I am an 8-day bride.
Seriously? I feel like it should have been longer than that. It probably has to do with the fact that I couldn't do a case last week. Again, thank you guys, for understanding the fact that I am not feeling very well lately right now. No, it's not COVID, before anybody asks.
The story starts something like this. Christina McCone worked at a bank in Ontario. She was classified as a competent employee, and she was in love with war veteran John Kettlewell, who is also known as Jack. And it was a man that she had known for 3 years. Christina and John were said to be very good friends with a professional ballroom dancer named Ronald Barrie. On May 12th in 1947, Christina married John. Her family was not supportive and they were worried about it, so the couple essentially eloped, just basically getting married without the blessing of Christina's parents.
And back then, that was a big no-no.
In 1947, it was a very different thing, yes. So Christina's sister, Helen, was extremely worried about their marriage. Helen believed that the 3 young adults spent an inordinate amount of time with one another, and she would comment that the family thought that perhaps Ronald was also in love with Christina.
So it could either be just the standard possible love triangle or a polygamous relationship.
Right, and in 1947, totally unheard of, right?
Oh, yeah. I
mean, not necessarily unheard of, but very, very taboo in society.
I mean, I don't really, well, it's still unheard of because it's you don't really hear about a lot of polygamous couples in the 40s, so.
No. The sister also said that Christina seemed out of it, like she was drugged for a few days leading up to the wedding, and most noticeably during the wedding itself. Helen claimed Christina seemed to come to when she was married and just sort of accept it.
So, okay. What? Her parents saw that she was like this? They didn't say anything?
Her sister. I don't know if her parents saw it.
Oh my God.
So following the elopement, the Kettlewells, so the married couple, spent the next few days at an apartment in Toronto on Tyndall Avenue. Weirdly, Ronald joined them for the entirety of their honeymoon. And on May 17th, the trio headed out to Ronald's remote cottage in Severn Falls, which is a place that's only accessible by boat. Now, I say it was weird. Again, it's partially because it's 1947, but also even by today's standards, usually couples take time by themselves on their honeymoon. But I actually know of a bride in particular. It was kind of an interesting situation, but she got married, and then I was maid of honor, and then I was made co-maid of honor because she met some girl and befriended her on the internet. And then
That
that
sounds
girl
sketch.
also went with them on their honeymoon.
Polygamous
So
couple.
no, it wasn't like that. Because I'm not friends with the girl anymore. That's kind of a long, dramatic story.
Oh, I
But
know what
I
you're talking
do
about.
know, right? As soon as they got back from their honeymoon, the bride and this girl weren't friends anymore. So I don't know what happened on the honeymoon, but also they were a pretty vanilla couple.
I completely agree about when couples go on honeymoons, they go to be like obviously by themselves and stuff. But I remember when my dad got married to my stepmom many, many moons ago, and they're no longer married. They went to Hawaii for their honeymoon. And I remember being super salty. My sixth grade, no, was it sixth grade? It was either sixth or seventh grade. I was middle school, basically. My middle school self was super salty because my oldest stepbrother got to go to Hawaii, and my grandparents on my stepmom's side got to go to Hawaii with them. So it was basically like a little mini family vacation, but Alex didn't get to go. And now that I like see
Stands
it, it
out.
was probably because I was under the age of 21, so it's like it's not like I could go and do anything and like party like do all that. But, middle school me was super salty at the time. So, I mean, I kind of see like there are some honeymoons where like they'll do like group honeymoon type things or whatever, and I've seen it happen where like the couple still gets time alone, but like they have like family come with them. It's really weird, and I wouldn't want that, but whatever floats your boat, I guess.
I guess. Yeah. So once the three were at Ronald's cabin, it was reported that Christina started to act odd, with bouts of being dazed and crying fits. She also
Oh,
had multiple conversations with Ronald as to whether or not John was actually in love with her. On May 20th, Ronald left the cottage to sunbathe, and when he returned to the cabin, he found it on fire with John inside. John was in a stupor, likely due to a wound on his head. Ronald took his friend out of the burning building, but when he searched for Christina, she wasn't there. The men left to go get John to the hospital and to call for help. The cottage burned down within an hour. It was hours after that Christina was found, and she was found only 150 feet from the cottage in just 9 inches of water, and she was dead.
okay. So I understand wanting to get his friend to the hospital for help, but if he's conscious and awake, and the cottage is on fire, you would think they would want to actually look for, the other missing person.
Mhm.
And it's
But
kind of
I think
weird.
it was like they cleared she wasn't in the cabin, and so they left to go get him help.
But I mean, 150 feet away isn't that far away, though. Like, they easily could have, like, done a circle and checked and easily found her.
Well, I'm going to circle back to that here. Jack, Ronald, and 20 other people were questioned by police in connection with the case. Jack was interrogated by the police for 3 hours after being released from the hospital where he had been treated for burns, shock, and a head injury. Also, apparently being drugged.
Interesting.
However, Jack claimed to not remember anything that occurred after 11 a.m. on the day of Christina's death. Ronald was questioned by police for a grueling 13 hours, in which he provided a 3,000-word statement that the police would describe as fantastic.
How much do you want to bet it was literally just him talking about his heroic actions in saving Jack? It was just so fantastic.
So there's something that didn't occur to me until right this minute. So we're talking, this is like May, right? And it's Ontario, so it's farther
Why is
north.
he swimming in the middle of
Why
the
is he
ocean?
sunbathing? No, he's not swimming. He's sunbathing
Oh,
in May in the north.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I don't live in Canada, but I also know that at least in Port Angeles, it's not warm enough to sunbathe in Washington. At least in Port Angeles. I'm not talking about like Eastern Washington.
Right, and Ontario is farther north than that.
Yeah. Ontario is like way up there. So I would assume that it's a little bit colder up there for longer periods of time.
Yeah,
So, homie, what are you doing?
that's an interesting thing to think about. During the investigation, a firefighter claimed it was strange that Christina had been found where she was because while he had been attempting to put the fire out, he had gone to the river to get water, but he hadn't seen her. The autopsy revealed Christina had codeine in her stomach, but she had ultimately died of drowning. When John was interrogated by the police, he seemed to have virtually no memory of the day, like I said, after 11 a.m. By June 19th, an inquest began to decide whether or not Christina Kettlewell's death involved foul play. The inquest took place at a courthouse and amassed a spectacle so large it led to both John and Ronald being asked for autographs by women. The inquest wasn't a murder trial. It was just a case to determine whether or not there was foul play involved with Christina's death.
All right, so first off, codeine, for those of you who don't know, it's basically just like it's a narcotic
Mm-hmm.
and stuff, and it's a high risk for addiction. It's used to treat pain. It's like it's basically a stronger thing than like Tylenol, but you can
Right.
have codeine coated Tylenol
Mm-hmm.
and stuff. So if you give somebody enough of it and they're not used to pain medication, it can make them a little bit more loopy and
Right.
stuff.
Also, it was not uncommon to be able to get your hands on that in 1947.
Yeah. Wasn't this when they had like, cocaine and Coca-Cola?
And heroin. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that too. That's why it tasted so good. But anyways,
It wasn't so
so
much that that's why it tasted so good, it's why it was addictive.
right. But so she easily could have like had the codeine in her system and made her loopy and like tired and a lot more pliable for them for someone or Christina to just fall into the river. However, if she wasn't where she was if she wasn't there like when the firefighter was getting the water from the river, then a few things could have happened. She could have fallen in somewhere else and got brought downstream, like somebody could put her in there afterwards. Like there's a few things that could have happened there. However, I don't know how anybody could have put her there afterwards if it was
That she drowned.
uh John or Ronald, because they were both technically at the hospital
Right.
when everything went down.
Well, the inquest ultimately was unable to come up to an actual definitive decision as to whether or not foul play had been involved. That means that they didn't take the case any further.
Of
But
course.
many strange details of the lives of the three who had been staying at the cabin were more or less revealed during the inquest. One of the revelations that occurred included the fact that some believed Christina had been upset about a potentially unnatural relationship between the two men,
Well, I
which
could have
was,
called that one.
likely 1940s lingo for they were gay, or at least bi.
Which nothing is wrong with that, but back then, you know how people were.
Agreed. No, nothing's wrong with it. But back in 1947, that was incredibly taboo and also illegal in a lot of ways because 1947. At one point, John even admitted to having an intimate relationship with his friend, Ronald, but later he claimed he was coerced into saying it. There were two main theories investigated at the inquest.
They were roommates. They were roommates.
Right. Is there anything you'd like to input before we
No.
go to the theories?
This is just, I'm telling you right now, she was probably a beard. She didn't like it. And either she killed herself or one of them killed her.
We're going to get into that right now. Actually, let's discuss the theories that came from the inquest. The first theory describes the events of the honeymoon as insurance fraud committed by John and Ronald. Apparently, Ronald's cabin had been insured recently, naming, guess who? John as the beneficiary. It was
Nice.
Further detailed that when John had received his war gratuity because he was a war vet, he had given it to da, 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 da,
Ronald.
Ronald. The potential insurance fraud didn't just end there, though. John had also taken out life insurance policies for $5,000 on both himself and his wife. And the real kicker is that there was a clause in the policies that stated if the death was accidental, when the amount of money would then be doubled.
What the heck?
Oh, $10,000 in Canadian back then would be roughly equal to $200,000 today.
So that
200, I'm sorry, 200,000 US dollars
that's
today.
suspicious. That is so suspicious. Like, oh hey, by the way, happen to take out these life insurance policies. Oh look, if it's an accident.
Right. Oh, it's doubled. Ah.
Oh my god, that's
It
such
was,
a shock.
it was
Don't
also
be
suspicious.
suspicious. Don't be suspicious. Don't
Right.
be suspicious. Don't be suspicious.
It was also suspicious that Ron had previously pursued careers in both insurance and construction. So one could almost theorize, that the two men had a romantic relationship and planned the whole thing.
I mean, don't get me wrong, okay? I don't think that if they decided to kill this person, I do not think that it was because they were gay. I do think it is because like they're just terrible people though. Like, oh hey, let's marry this girl, let's put a life insurance policy on her name. Oh hey, let's kill her to get that life insurance policy money. I mean,
Well, so the inquest didn't just bring to light the scandalous facts about the men, it also brought to light a number of discerning facts about the dead bride. This second theory relies on those, and it assumes Christina killed herself and possibly attempted to kill her husband due to mental illness. Apparently, so remember, this happened in May. Apparently, Christina had written multiple suicide letters leading up to her death, starting just 5 weeks before the wedding. And at the time, she wasn't even engaged yet. The first note was written on Easter Sunday, so beginning of April, before their engagement and about 5 weeks before the wedding. It was addressed to Ronald. In it, she writes that she tried to poison herself and talks about the uncertainty of receiving a proposal from Jack. And she says, "This will be the best way out, as I cannot bear to see another girl have him."
oh
Jack
god.
recalls Christina being sick that day, but claimed in his testimony that he was unaware of the suicide note. Now, she wrote another suicide note at the end of April. This time, her intention, as detailed in the note, was not only to kill herself, but Jack as well.
No.
In this note, also addressed to Ronald, she wrote, "When you love someone, you really love him, and I know there is no one for me but Jack, and if I cannot have him, I do not intend anyone else to. I waited, as you might say, in the hope that Jack would ask me to marry him, but now I realize I am just a passing fancy." The last note was written the day before she died. It was addressed to a Mrs. Thomas, who owned a home in Mimico that Christina and Jack stayed in for a little bit. Once done, Christina asked Ronald to mail the letter for her. She writes, "Ronnie is in the boat outside somewhere. By the time he gets back, everything will all be over with. He must have been afraid something would happen because he is staying an extra day to make sure we go back to Toronto with him." All notes were confirmed by a handwriting expert to have been signed by Christina. Ronald held on to all the notes from Christina, but he never told Jack about them until the inquest. Strangely, Ronald was able to, and chose to, save the letters from his burning cottage. So maybe Jack and Ronald weren't so innocent.
So, okay, so let's just ignore that last part for a second. The fact
Okay.
that she had all of these suicide notes already lined up, and they were basically talking about how This man needed to ask her to marry him. She couldn't have him. No one can. All this stuff. All this really, oh gosh. This is like Fatal Attraction, like
Right.
Swim Fan, like all those types of movie type things. You know what I mean? Like, you remember that movie Swim Fan where she basically is just like, if I can't have you, no one can. And like,
Mhm.
yeah. Or like Glenn Close Fatal Attraction type. Like, this is what it sounds like with that.
It does.
And like, I really hate to say that, but that's what it sounds like and everything. And if this actually could be a really solid theory where she probably finds out that Jack and Ronald are, lovers, which, I mean, it nowadays it wouldn't be a bad thing, but if she did have mental issues where she thought, "Oh, if I can't have him, no one can,"
Mhm.
then she probably lashed out in a rage and attacked him and then maybe killed herself, or she killed herself and made it seem like they did it so that way they would get blamed for it, or like, because especially like, the Ronnie is on the boat outside somewhere, by the time he gets back everything will be all over with. He must have been afraid. Like that right there, if that is true, then homie knew what was up. And so
Well, she had given him a suicide note before.
yeah, so like
Like,
homie knew what was up, and it's like
right.
I feel like if my
No.
friend if I had gotten one of those and my friend was getting married to this woman, I feel like, look, man, we gotta talk. Like, we have to talk. But the fact that he was able to, like, miraculously save these letters and he knew exactly where they were, like, I,
And
I
save
don't
them
I
from
don't
a
know.
burning cottage that burned down within an hour.
Yeah, like, I don't know about you, but, like, I mean, don't get me wrong, I have important documents stored places, but if my house is burning down, I'm worried about my kids and my animals. I'm not really worried about important documents.
Right. And it sounds like he had to really drag his friend from this burning building.
Yeah,
So when
especially
you
if he
also have
had,
the
like, the
matters.
injuries that especially if he had the injuries that he was saying, like,
Right.
no, something so it's just weird all around. It does seem like a good theory that maybe she killed herself and made it look like, because like, I mean, there's cases like that out there. Like, look, like, I mean, it's not a case, but, like, look at the movie Gone Girl.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, and it
homegirl
sounds like she was essentially drugged, but I think she was possibly drugging herself.
probably.
If she was
Because
that
because,
unhappy.
I mean, think about it, it's, like, the perfect thing, like, again, look at this movie Gone Girl, she sets up this entire thing
Mhm.
where she fakes her own death, blames her husband,
Mhm.
and she almost gets away with it, and then makes this miraculous, like, re-entry and stuff, so, like, this is what it's sounding like, "Oh, let me set the stage, let me pretend to be crazy, let me have these suicide notes, let me do this," because I'm telling you right now, if somebody wants to commit suicide, they're gonna do it.
Mhm.
They're gonna do it.
Mhm.
So, if you go by this theory, it looks like it looks like she knew that Jack was into Ron.
Mhm.
She was mad because Jack was into Ron and not her, and basically just using her as, like, a beard, essentially, and she wanted to get back at him, and instead of, just dating somebody else, she decides to go full on Glenn Close and tries to stage him for murder, but she ends up actually killing herself instead of just faking her murder.
Well, I think it needs to be noted, though, that when the inquest revealed, so going back to the first theory as well, when the inquest revealed that Jack had given his war gratuity, which is, I know we talked about, but it's a payment that Canadian servicemen get when they're discharged, and he gave it to Ronald, it was found that Jack had removed all of his family from his will for unknown reasons. Right. So also, here's some more fun facts here. Christina's wedding ring became a suspicious detail in the inquest, as it was never recovered. Reports say, a couple different things. It's not really sure as to whether Ronald purchased a ring for Christina or if Jack borrowed a ring from a married friend. The true price of the ring is also not sure, ranging anywhere from $1,000 to $13,000. Nevertheless, it was never found after Christina's death. So even if there was one at all, because this was right after they got married, and some people wait. And it sounds like it was a really quick engagement. So it's possible there was no ring. Jack's statement to the police after the fire was another really interesting thing. In it, Jack states that he and Ronald had been in an intimate relationship for some time. However, in court, like I said, Jack claimed he was coerced to make that statement as police wanted to build that story in their report.
Because they wanted some kind of reasoning on why she could have just...
Right.
Why, yeah.
The police commissioner did, in fact, touch on this relationship in the report of Christina's case. In it, he writes that the relationship between Jack and Ronald was, quote, to put it mildly, to be unnatural. There was no evidence to prove the relationship, but it was, of course, highly suspected. And in the inquest, Crown Counsel C.P. Hope didn't believe Jack was coerced and suggested that the two were actually lovers. Jack finally agreed to this after Hope hammered him with questions. The Toronto Star describes the questioning in an article from June 20th. It says, quote, when Kettlewell, after vigorous questioning, agreed with Mr. Hope's repeated suggestion that he and Ronald were male lovers, the fantastic triangle of twisted and thwarted emotions took shape.
Okay. So they were really trying to hammer this they were roommates scenario down so badly, which I get because that's honestly what it's seeming like. And if neither of them ever got married after this, and if neither of them ever, like, you know,
there wasn't any information about it,
could be possible. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's just so weird. Like, I don't know.
Right.
Like, I honestly have like no input or words in this because this is just, it's so weird.
So
it's so weird.
To summarize, 3 people, really good friends, 2 of them get married, all 3 of them go on the honeymoon at this remote cabin you can only reach by boat, and there's a mysterious fire. The man gets pulled from the burning building, no woman around. Firemen use the lake water to help put the fire out, can't find the bride, and then suddenly she appears 150 feet away from the cabin in only 9 inches of water. She's dead, cause of death, drowning. Both the bride and the groom are drugged, and there's mysterious life insurance policies taken out on both the bride and the groom, as well as an insurance policy on the cabin.
And the only other person there is the groom's friend / potential lover.
Right. Dun dun dun.
Like, this is a weird case.
It really is. So some people believe that the crimes happened because of a strange accident. Others think it may have been a planned event. No one knows what really went down, but there are many theories as to why these things have occurred. Some say they were committed in the name of insane passion, while others argue premeditated fraud was behind them all. No matter how this sordid story begins or ends, it just goes to show you not everything is always as it seems from the outside.
Thank you for listening to True Crime and Chill. For more information, including case notes, photos, and sources, please visit our website at truecrimeandchill.com. You can also stay connected with us on social media. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Look for new episodes from us each week on Tuesday.